So on Monday night, it was reported by basically every single hockey outlet that John Tavares was getting the Maple Leafs captaincy stripped away from him in favor of a younger and better player in Austin Matthews. And it kind of got me thinking about John Tavares. I'm an Islanders fan. And just looking back on his career, and while it is by no means a bust or even a disappointment, I think at this point, barring the Toronto Maple Leafs winning a Stanley Cup or him having some insane resurgency, that it just feels very underwhelming, the career that he had based on the talent that he showed early on in his career. So I kind of wanted to do a video essay diving in on this. So this is why John Tavares' career is seemingly underwhelming at this point. Up first, we need to talk about John Tavares as a prospect, because early on in this guy's career, 15, 16 years old, he was genuinely trending to be a generational talent. In fact, he was the first player to ever get exceptional status in the CHL, and rightfully so. At 15 years old, he had 45 goals, 32 assists, or 77 points in 65 games, finishing 9th in the entire OHL in goals. And then the following season, he had one of the most impressive draft year minus two seasons of all time, when he had 72 goals, 62 assists for 134 points in 67 games. Generational numbers. He even won the CHL Player of the Year over Patrick Kane in his draft year, who had 62 goals, 83 assists, 145 points. It was insane. For comparison, Sidney Crosby in his draft year -1 had similar stats. He had 54 goals, 81 assists for 135 points in 59 games. And Steven Stamkos in his draft year -1, not even his draft year -2, like Tavares, had 42 goals, 50 assists for 92 points in 63 games. John Tavares was looked at as a far better prospect back in 2007 than Steven Stamkos or even Patrick Kane. He would go on to have a very solid 118 points in his draft year -1 and around the same totals in his draft year, making him the surefire first overall pick in the 2009 draft and genuinely a future superstar franchise center for the New York Islanders. And he developed like that future franchise center right out of the gate as a rookie. He had 24 goals, 30 assists for 54 points, which doesn't sound that impressive, but this was back in 2010 when scoring was lower, and he led the team in scoring on a 79-point New York Islanders team where their other best players were a young Kyle Okposo, Matt Molson, and Mark Streit. He'd follow that up in his sophomore season, taking another step, 29 goals, 38 assists for 67 points in 78 games, leading the New York Islanders by 14 points, and his other leading scorers were Matt Molson and P.A. Parento. By year 3, at only 21 years old, he was a legit franchise top 20 player in the entire NHL, having 31 goals, 50 assists for 81 points, dragging Matt Molson to a 36-goal season. The Islanders still were not a playoff team, but he ranked 7th in the entire NHL in scoring. The next season, the 2013 lockout season, he took yet another step and actually finished as a Hart finalist, leading the Islanders to 55 points in 48 games, having 28 goals and 19 assists for 47 points in 48 games, only finishing behind Ovechkin and Crosby in Hart voting. So at this point, John Tavares is 22 years old. He just put up 48 goal pace in a season, and the Islanders are an up-and-coming team with a lot of young talent. Things are looking really good for Tavares. It looks like he's going to be a for sure Hall of Famer one day, and maybe even lead the Islanders to their first Stanley Cup since 1983. Before the 2013-2014 season, John Tavares is named the captain of the New York Islanders, and Garth Snow, just 13 games into the season, makes a massive move when he trades for Thomas Vanek. Now, Vanek was a very good player for the New York Islanders. He had 17 goals, 27 assists for 44 points in 47 games, but the New York Islanders just went 18, 26, and 4 with Thomas Vanek before the Olympic break, and at the Olympics, John Tavares would tear his MCL and meniscus and be out for the rest of the season. So after going all in just 13 games into the season to get Thomas Vanek because of the Tavares injury, they have to sell Vanek at the deadline, trading him away for peanuts to the Montreal Canadiens for a second-round pick and prospect Sebastian Colbert. The Islanders end up finishing with 74 points, and things are looking very grim for them. After making the playoffs in 2013, John Tavares is kind of on an island yet again, and his top defensemen are Andrew McDonald and Thomas Hickey. However, that offseason, there is some optimism as they go on to draft Michael Dalcol and Josh Hosang, who appear to be future wingers for Tavares to play with, and in actual moves that actually panned out, they ended up trading for Nick Leddy and Johnny Boychuk to form a pretty solid solid top pair. The next season would arguably be the best season of John Tavares' career. He would go on to have 38 goals, 48 assists for 86 points, being just 1 point off of the Art Ross, which Jamie Benn would go on to win. And yet again, he finished third in the Hart Trophy voting, only behind Carey Price and Alexander Ovechkin, and the Islanders make the playoff. They do sadly go on to lose in 7 games to the Washington Capitals, but with the season that Tavares just had, as well as other guys like Brock Nelson and Anders Lee emerging as serious roster players, still in their early to mid-20s, things are looking pretty optimistic for Tavares and the Islanders again. Then in 2016, after making the playoffs the year prior, the Islanders would yet again solidify themselves as a legit playoff team and would actually win a series for the first time since 1993. John Tavares would score the OT game winner in Game 6, the biggest goal of the 21st century for the New York Islanders. And in that series, he had 5 goals, 4 assists, 9 points in 6 games, absolutely took over. However, in that 2016 offseason, one move was just really bad from Garth Snow. He let Kyle Okposo walk and instead decided to bring in veteran 2-time Cup champ Andrew Ladd on a 7-year, $5.5 million contract. And in part because of that massive flop from 2016, the Islanders would only be a 94-point team the following season and miss the playoffs. Tavares would be solid yet again, but they were trending in the wrong direction. Then in 2018, the first full season under new head coach Doug Weight, despite 2 great individual performances that season, Matt Barzal winning the Calder with 85 points and John Tavares getting back to legit superstar production of 37 goals, 47 assists for 84 points, the team would fall yet again, go down 14 points, all the way down to 80 points and just completely miss it. Tavares was still a legit superstar, but when looking at the Islanders, he'd only made the playoffs 3 out of 9 seasons, only won 1 playoff series, and outside of Matt Barzal, there wasn't that many promising pieces. They still didn't have a franchise defenseman or a franchise goaltender. So he exercised his unrestricted free agency rights and decided to head to the Toronto Maple Leafs on what was looked at as a discount at the time on 7 years at $11 million, while the Sharks were offering like $13 million. And although I was absolutely heartbroken as a New York Islanders fan, I wish that he wanted out at the deadline so we could have at least traded him. It made perfect sense. Him going back home to be the hometown hero on a team that had a young superstar in Austin Matthews. Marner and Nylander were trending to be elite talents. Morgan Riley had 52 points in 2018, as well as Anderson being 28 years old and just finishing 4th in the Vezina. And when looking at the Leafs from that first regular season, it was as advertised. They were looking like a young future dynasty as Tavares yet again had amazing production, 47 goals, 41 assists, 88 points. Austin Matthews had 37 goals, 36 assists for 73 points in 68 games. Mitch Marner exploded for 94 points. Morgan Riley had 72 points, and Anderson had a 917 in 60 games. They did, however, blow a 3-2 lead to the Boston Bruins in the playoffs, but the pressure and expectations weren't as high as they were to come in later years. They were still a young, up-and-coming team, and the Boston Bruins went to 7 games in the Stanley Cup Finals. Honestly, Leafs fans were thinking, oh, we can contend with teams that are making the Stanley Cup Final. And then after his first season went so well, he ended up getting the captaincy. Now, there is some controversy around him getting the captaincy. Austin Matthews had an incident at a nightclub where he did some not so good things in front of a female security guard, but John Tavares was given the captaincy in part because he was the veteran and he had previously been the captain with the New York Islanders. I never really thought that he was that great of a captain. He's more of a stoic, boring guy, but it made sense given his leadership. In 2019, 2020, he would have 26 goals, 34 assists for 60 points in 64 games. Again, still very good, but then come playoff time, the big four, the Toronto Maple Leafs, would lose to a big 4 forward core of PLD, Cam Atkinson, Boone Jenner, and Nick Foligno to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and technically not even make the actual playoffs in the bubble. Really disappointing. Then in the 2021 COVID-shortened season, 19 goals, 31 assists, 50 points in 56 games. Again, very solid for an $8 to $9 million center, not an $11 million guy. And then come the playoffs, he got hurt in the first period of Game 1 against the Canadiens, so you can't really blame him for that. But the Toronto Maple Leafs would absolutely collapse and blow a 3-1 lead against their bitter rival. Fresh off of that, coming off a major concussion, he bounced back pretty solid, but again, not an $11 million player. 27 goals, 49 assists for 76 points in 79 games. They go on to blow a 3-2 lead against Tampa Bay Lightning. And it ain't 2019 anymore. Everybody is absolutely pissed, and Tavares is one of the main whipping boys. However, in 2023, he has his best regular season since 2018-2019 with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He has 36 goals, 44 assists for 80 points, and scores the game-winning OT goal to snap the Toronto Maple Leafs first-round drought in Game 6 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Very similar to what he did with the New York Islanders. But in round 2 against Florida Panthers, they get absolutely abused, both physically physically and mentally and lose in 5 games, lose a bunch of close games. And Tavares only has 1 point, 1 assist in that 5-game series, and yet again gets a lot of hate. There still was some optimism, considering the fact Tavares was near 40-40 and did score that massive goal. However, in the 2023-2024 regular season, he would have his worst regular season as a Toronto Maple Leaf yet, having 29 goals, 36 assists for 65 points in 80 games. And then, of course, in the playoffs, the Toronto Maple Leafs look absolutely lifeless the first 4 games, besides Matthews taking over in Game 2. They go down 3-1 and end up losing a heartbreaker OT goal against the Boston Bruins in Game 7. Nothing has changed since John Tavares has arrived. Which leads us now to where we are right now. He just got stripped of the captaincy, and kind of rightfully so, considering he is overpaid and the results have not been there. They've made the playoffs every single season, or I guess you can count in 2020 they didn't, but only 1 playoff series win to show for it. And that summary is just where I draw the conclusion to that he just seems underwhelming, considering the fact that in his prime, he had maybe not the same level of skill as a Patrick Kane or Steven Stamkos, but definitely was in the same tier, but his career absolutely does not come close to that. Because when you look at his prime from the start of the 2011-2012 season to the 2018-2019 season, he was 5th in the entire NHL in points and 3rd in goals, only behind Stamkos and Ovechkin. But because the New York Islanders never surrounded him with the right amount of talent, he never won that personal award, never got to that Art Ross when he was 1 point off in 2015, and never had any semblance of team success. And even as a Toronto Maple Leaf from 2018 to before the 2023-2024 season, he was 17th in goals in the entire NHL, as well as 24th in points. The only problem is he's been a top 7 highest paid player in the entire NHL during that stretch because of the flat cap. So as a result, he has got a shit ton of hate because he has not lived up to his cap space, when the initial plan was for other guys, the cap to continue to go up, and he would have been probably like the 20th, 21st highest paid guy by now. And now, when looking at a potential legacy, neither of the teams that he played for in his career are remotely close to potentially retiring his jersey. I think, honestly, the New York Islanders, his career has probably been worthy the 9 seasons that he was there, but the way that he left, if he got traded at the deadline, at the 2018 deadline, he probably would have got his jersey retired. But now, with the way that he burned the bridges, leaving in free agency for nothing, it ain't happened. So now the only way that he could get his jersey retired in Toronto is if they win a cup, and that might not even be enough because Marner, Matthews, Nylander, and Riley are all going to be ahead of him as core pieces from day one. It's just no legacy. I don't know how to explain it, but it feels like he just has no legacy. So you have this career where, in the New York Islanders standpoint, never had the team success. He could have stayed with the New York Islanders and been widely regarded as the greatest non-dynasty Islander of all time. He would have been a top 5 Islander of all time, been top 3 in every single counting stat that matters: games played, goals, and points. He decided to abandon that for what he thought was going to be more team success, and he actually has had significantly less team success than even the New York Islanders since he left. He seems like kind of a lesser version of Matt Sundin. Matt Sundin had better longevity, but Matt Sundin put up a lot of empty calorie points, never really went deep in the playoffs, never really sniffed a personal award. John Tavares is the same way. He might make the Hall of Fame on the line just because he surpasses 1,250 career points. But when it's all said and done, when we're talking about this generation of the 2010s, you're not going to hear John Tavares' name brought up that much because he didn't win an award and he didn't have any team success. It's kind of underwhelming for a guy that is one of the best prospects of the 21st century at this point. So yeah, let me know in the comments, what do you think about it? Again, John Tavares, not a bust, not a disappointing career. It just is kind of underwhelming from both an individual standpoint, the fact that we never really got to see him at the height of his powers, considering he didn't have that much talent around him, and also from a team success, the fact that he's only won 2 playoff rounds in like a 14-15 season career. It makes him a guy that is just truly going to have no legacy unless he somehow wins a cup with the Toronto Maple Leafs.